With the Spider-Man franchise going strong for over 20 years with more on the way, here's all 10 Spider-Man movies ranked from worst to best. I usually don't use the phrase "there's too many cooks in the kitchen," but it wasn't surprising when I found out there's 3 writers for this movie and 4 people credited to the story. The most jarring thing is that this doesn't feel like a Spider-Man story. A lot of people like to criticize Tom Holland's Spider-Man as being too different from the status quo, but this film literally opens with Peter's parents in a plane having a fistfight with CIA operatives as they try to download something on a computer. I wasn't really paying attention. The first Amazing Spider-Man film presented itself as a more grounded take on Spider-Man compared to Raimi's stylized version, and literally one film later they go full cartoon mode. There are 3 villains in this movie and all of them are terrible. I mean, you got Dane DeHaan, Paul Giamatti, and Django himself in her movie, and they're all terrible. I don't know what the hell Paul Giamatti was doing or why he's even in this film. Dane DeHaan is fine until he becomes Gene Wilder with a rotting face. Jamie Foxx looks and acts like a cartoon character. But let's break down every side plot of this film and decide which one is relevant to the story. There's a mystery what happened to Peter's parents that doesn't really get resolved or contributes to the story. There's a rhino that shows up in the beginning and end of the film and contributes nothing. Beiji Novak is his abusive boss who treats Jamie Foxx like trash, and you think once he turns into Electro we have a scene where he finds his abusive boss and kills him, like the scene with Green Goblin and his bosses? Nope. You could've just trimmed this movie down to Electro, Green Goblin, and the love story between Andrew and Gwen, and you would've gotten a more memorable film. The plot just became too convoluted. Some people like this one, and I will admit that the visuals aren't half bad, but just missed the landing. The Kendrick Lamar song at the end was good though.
And everybody know the story of David and Goliath, but this is bigger than Trump. This is for the warrior, this is for you and I.
I know a lot of people like this film, and there's some that consider this the best of the original trilogy. I don't. My thoughts have always been the same on this one. Sandman works, Venom does not. Raimi wanted Sandman to be the main villain, but the studio pushed him to make it Venom, and you could definitely tell. There's so much love and depth put into Sandman's backstory and character arc, and then Venom is just kinda there. There's also Harry turning into the new Green Goblin, which would be a really good storyline and natural progression of his character arc, but since there's 2 other villains, he's only a villain for like one scene until he gets amnesia for most of the film. Also doesn't have any action scenes that stand out, like Spider-Man had the final fight and Spider-Man 2 had the iconic train fight with Doc Ock, but I can't remember any fight scenes in this one except maybe for the truck fight. It's definitely more entertaining and rewatchable than the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but just as messy. This is a movie where every time I watch I think, hey, that's pretty good, and I forget about it the day after. I don't exactly know what makes this film forgettable, as a lot of stuff works for me. Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone have great chemistry, the lizard's an interesting villain, until he actually becomes a lizard, and the first half where he gets his powers was engaging. I think it just comes from a directing standpoint. I mean, don't get me wrong, Marc Webb has proven himself to be a great director, but a lot of this movie takes place at nighttime, and the lighting is really bad. This is probably the darkest Spider-Man movie. Not in tone, it's still lighthearted. I mean, it's literally the darkest one. Why is it that most of the scenes with the lizard are at nighttime when he's literally dark green? It's an okay film, but definitely the most forgettable. There's a lot of things to like here. The humor is top notch. This may be the funniest Spider-Man movie. It's interesting to see how the universe reacted to the blip, and Mysterio is a great villain. The twist may have been obvious, but Jake Gyllenhaal is great in every film I've seen him in. The thing that I think holds this film back is that it's not very rewatchable, and that's because of the lack of tension. Every monster Peter fights in this film is just a projection who technically can't pose much of a threat. The action scenes are also kind of underwhelming. Spider-Man fighting a bunch of drones just isn't as interesting as him fighting a man with wings or a man with testicles. That came out wrong. The only scene where I really felt Peter was in danger is the one where Mysterio messes with reality. It's the only time where Peter is fighting someone who's actively trying to kill him. Not only is the scene itself really good both visually and creatively, but Peter and the audience are caught off guard on what's happening. The part where the train rams into Peter is a better jump scare than most horror movies. It's just not one I go back to that often. Back when Marvel is at its peak. I know a lot of people see this as being middle of the road, but I really like this one. The action scenes are good, Tom Holland is great as Peter Parker from the start, and it's really entertaining. It's also the only one where Peter's high school life is just as interesting as the action scenes. It was stressful seeing Peter trying to balance his personal life with superhero stuff and seeing all the things he missed out on. But at the end of the day, Michael Keaton elevates this movie. The Vulture is a top 3 Spider-Man and MCU villain in general. The twist that he's Liz's dad is a much better, more personal plot twist than Mysterio, and once he figures out Peter is Spider-Man, he becomes menacing. The MCU is a franchise with aliens, monsters, and Nazis, but the scene where a man threatens a teenager with a gun remains one of the most suspenseful scenes of all these movies. It has a great story, a great villain, and is overall pretty solid. I want to empathize, I don't like this movie just for the cameos and fan service. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty big part of it, but a lot of people make it out as if this is a bad movie that people only like for nostalgia, while I don't think that's the case. The story here is really good. Seeing Peter's life being ruined by a secret identity getting revealed and how it affects his friends was interesting. I was already invested before the cameos started coming in, but once they did, I had a lot of fun. Even though the lizard is sidelined and the Sandman does not have to be there, everyone else is utilized perfectly. Willem Defoe especially was great in this movie. I don't care if he's nearly 70 years old, he needs to be a Joker for at least one movie. Look at his face. The scene where Aunt May dies was devastating. I did not care for a character that much beforehand, but the scene itself and the way it affects Peter really made you feel the gravity of the situation. The climax of the movie definitely could have been longer. Electro only gets 1 or 2 minutes to fight before losing his powers, but still one of the better movies of Phase 4. Everything this point forward is at least a 9 or above, and this is no exception. I love Sam Raimi's directing style and completely fits a comic book movie, and the action scenes have aged surprisingly well. Alfred Molina is still amazing as Doc Ock, the special effects are timeless, the train scene is a top 10 scene of any superhero movie, the emotion in this is top notch. I miss when the main character in comic book movies actually had a character arc and went through development, whereas nowadays they just fight, beat the bad guy, and go on with their lives. I don't really have anything else to say, it's just a damn good film. And before I get to my top 3, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more like it, consider subscribing. Even though Spider-Man 2 has slightly better effects and action, I love origin stories and this may be one of the best ones. Seeing how he becomes Spider-Man and figures out his powers is my favorite part of the movie. Uncle Ben's death still gets me to this day, adds a nice touch to Spider-Man's story. He isn't just being a superhero because it's the right thing to do, but because he feels a responsibility to do it, which is sparked by Uncle Ben's death. And even though Alfred Molina is great, Willem Dafoe steals every scene he's in, surely a great actor, and the rest of the cast is very good in this as well. His full personality, and every time I rewatch it, I feel like a kid again. Not much more you can ask from a film. Yeah, I'm going the predictable route here, but damn, this film is good. Like, damn. I think this clears every other animated film out there visually. Over a century of film and animation, and we still get movies that reinvent or do something never seen before. And under the visuals, action, and multiverse shit, there's an emotional core that hooks you in. A lot of this movie just explores a relationship with Miles and his parents, or Gwen and her parent, and those may be my favorite parts of the film. The soundtrack is pretty much perfect. I love how every character has their own theme music and how the genre changes with each universe. A good film isn't just a treat to the eyes, but a treat to the ears, and the music wonderfully complements the visuals. The main complaint I've heard is that the film goes too fast or too much stuff happens in 1 second, but the chaotic energy of the action just kind of fits in this film. Like, if you're going to make a movie of infinite universes, go all out. The only thing that holds us back from first place is that it's only one half of the story and concludes some storylines like the relationship with Gwen and her dad, but everything else is to be continued. I need to see Beyond the Spiderverse to fully decipher this film, so in other words, come back to this channel in 50 years when the sequel comes out. The reason I prefer this over Across the Spider-Verse, other than the fact that it ends on a cliffhanger, is I prefer the story in this one more. The character arc of Miles and some of the side characters is very well done and satisfying to watch. Uncle Aaron's death may just be as sad as Uncle Ben's, and the one-sided conversation with Miles' dad, who I definitely remember the name of, was very impactful. The action is fun and very well animated. This and the sequel are the only Spider-Man movies where they're able to juggle a lot of characters and not have to feel overstuffed. Spider-Man 3 has Sandman, Venom, and the new Green Goblin, and it was too much. This film has this many villains and this many Spider-Man, I like all of them. This may be one of the best animated movies of all time, as a top 3 comic book movie right next to The Dark Knight and Logan.